The gladiator hits the sand and stops moving, and before the crowd even finishes screaming, people are already climbing down toward the body, not to mourn him. They have cups. You watch a man kneel beside the dead fighter, press his cup against the open wound, and drink the blood while it is still warm. And the worst part of this whole picture is that you are holding a cup too, because someone you trust told you this was medicine. Not a joke, not a curse. Medicine. The best treatment in Rome for the thing that is wrong with you. That cup of blood was not the act of a madman. It was something a trained Roman doctor might have nodded along to, and in a few minutes I am going to tell you exactly why they believed it worked. But here's the thing you need to understand. Drinking the blood of a dead gladiator was not even the frightening option. The frightening option was what waited for you if you went looking for real help, from a real physician, in a real clinic. And there is one more thing I want you to hold on to, because I am saving it for the very end. The same city that built the cleanest sewers and the grandest public baths in the ancient world may have been quietly making you sicker every single day. Keep that in the back of your mind. We are coming back for it. So let us start at the beginning. The moment it all goes wrong. You wake up one morning in Rome, somewhere around the 2nd century after Christ. Your head is pounding. Your skin is hot to the touch, your stomach is twisting, and a cold thread of fear goes through you, because in your world there are no antibiotics, no thermometers, no idea what is actually happening inside your body. You are sick, and now you have to make a choice about who to trust, and that choice is far worse than you think. In your city today, you call a doctor and you assume the person who shows up spent 10 years studying to be there. In ancient Rome, that assumption did not exist because there was no such thing as a medical license. None. There was no exam, no school you had to finish, no board that could stop you. Anyone could paint the word medicus on a sign outside their door and start treating patients the next morning. A bankrupt builder, a freed slave, a traveling salesman who had picked up a few impressive Greek phrases. They could all call themselves doctors, and there was nothing you could do to tell the real healer from the confident liar until it was too late. The Romans knew this, and a lot of them, frankly, did not trust doctors at all. The Emperor Tiberius is supposed to have said that any man over the age of 30 who still needed a physician was a fool, that by then you ought to know your own body well enough to treat it yourself. And one of Rome's most respected statesmen, Cato the Elder, flat out refused to let Greek doctors near his household. He treated his own family with traditional Roman remedies instead: herbs, prayers, charms, and one ingredient above all others: cabbage. Cato genuinely believed cabbage could cure almost anything you threw at it, from open wounds to digestive trouble. So look at the menu in front of you. You can gamble your life on a stranger with a sign you cannot verify, or you can let your grandfather rub cabbage on you while he mutters an old chant. But let us say you want a real physician, a trained one, schooled in the best medical thinking of the age. That is the moment you run straight into a theory that went on to rule European medicine for more than 1,000 years, and the first thing it is going to want is your blood. A trained Roman doctor did not think about germs, because nobody on earth knew germs existed yet. Instead, he believed your body was filled with 4 fluids he called the humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. As long as the 4 stayed in balance, you were healthy. The moment one of them grew too strong, you got sick. So if you had a fever, the reasoning was simple. You had too much blood in you, and if the problem was too much blood, then the cure was obvious, and it was terrifying. Get some of it out. The doctor would open a vein, usually in your arm, and let you bleed into a bowl until he decided the balance had been corrected. If he wanted to be thorough, he brought out leeches. And I want to be clear about this because it is easy to laugh. This was not back alley quackery. This was the absolute cutting edge of respectable medicine, and the man who turned it into a polished system was a Greek physician named Galen. Galen learned his trade in the bloodiest classroom you can imagine. His early job was patching up gladiators, which meant he spent years staring directly into torn open human bodies, stitching shredded muscle and resetting shattered bone while the men were still alive to feel it. He got so good at keeping people breathing that he rose all the way to personal physician of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. And he wrote so much, and he argued with such total confidence that doctors treated his books as gospel for over 1,300 years after his death. There is just one problem with that. Galen was frequently, confidently wrong. Roman law forbade cutting open human corpses, so to study anatomy, he dissected pigs and apes and simply assumed that people were built the same way inside. Whole errors about the human body survived for 1,000 years because one brilliant man made his best guess using a monkey, and nobody dared to argue with him. And if the knife and the bleeding bowl did not save you, there was always a higher power to beg. Quick pause here, because we are about to step somewhere genuinely strange. If everything so far has made you quietly grateful that you were born in an age of medicine, hold that feeling, because the next part is even harder to believe, and the ending honestly changed the way I picture the entire Roman Empire. If you are the kind of person who likes the detail that the history books skip past, this is the channel for you, so stick around. The temple is waiting, and it is full of snakes. When human medicine ran out of answers, Romans turned to a god, and the god of healing was Asclepius. There is a story about how he first came to Rome. Around the year 293 before Christ, a deadly plague was tearing through the city, and in desperation the Romans sent a delegation across the sea to the famous healing temple at Epidaurus in Greece to beg the god for help. The priests there handed them a sacred snake, an animal believed to carry the god's own power inside it. As the ship sailed back up the river Tiber, the snake slipped off the deck and swam to a small island sitting in the middle of the river. The Romans read that as the god choosing his own ground, and they built his temple right there on Tiber Island, where you can still find the ruins today. And the way you got healed inside that temple was not with drugs or surgery, it was with sleep. The ritual was called incubation. You would walk into the inner chamber, lie down on the floor, and try to fall asleep while live snakes that were sacred to the god moved freely around the room, sometimes gliding right over the bodies of the people lying there. The belief was that Asclepius would come to you in a dream and either heal you where you lay or tell you precisely what to do to get better. In the morning, the priests would help you turn the dream into a prescription. So picture it. You are burning with fever, frightened, lying on a cold stone floor in the dark, and you hear something slide past your ear, and you have to lie still and pray it is the touch of a god and not a bite. And if the god stayed silent and the dream never came, there was one place left to go, the surgeon's table. Here is something that will sit with you for a while. The Romans were capable of real, serious surgery. We know this for a fact because an entire surgical kit was pulled out of the ground in Pompeii, frozen in place by the eruption of Vesuvius, in a building we now call the House of the Surgeon. Scalpels, hooks, probes, bone drills, forceps, and a speculum built with a screw mechanism so well designed that the same basic shape was still in use in Europe in the 1700s. And a Roman writer named Celsus left behind step-by-step instructions for operations that will make your skin crawl. They could cut into your bladder to remove a stone. They could even operate on cataracts by sliding a needle into your eye and physically pushing the clouded lens down and out of the way to give you back a little vision. They knew how to do these things. What they did not have was anesthesia in any form you would recognize. Yes, they had sedatives, opium, and a plant called mandrake, but nothing close to actually putting you under, which means, for most of it, you were awake. Awake for the needle going into your eye, awake for the blade opening your bladder, pinned down by the surgeon's assistants, biting down on something, fully conscious for all of it. A great Roman surgeon was judged partly on his speed, because working fast was the only mercy he had to give. So you would assume that the clinic was the single most dangerous place to be in all of Rome. It was not. Strangely enough, the safest place to be wounded was on a battlefield. This is the part that surprised me the most. The Roman army ran what may have been the best organized medical service anywhere in the ancient world. They built dedicated field hospitals called valetudinaria, and archaeologists have uncovered the floor plans, rows of small wards laid out to keep wounded soldiers separated and quiet so they could recover. They trained battlefield medics, the capsarii, to run into the chaos, stop the bleeding, and tie off torn limbs with bronze tourniquets before a man could bleed to death. And here is the detail I love most. They packed open wounds with honey. That sounds like pure superstition, until you learn that honey is genuinely antibacterial. It pulls the moisture out of bacteria and helps hold infection back, and modern hospitals still use medical-grade honey on wounds that refuse to heal. They washed injuries with wine and vinegar, which also kill bacteria. So an ordinary soldier with a sword wound may honestly have had better odds of surviving than a wealthy citizen with a fever and a fashionable doctor in the city. For one shining moment, Roman medicine actually worked, and then something arrived that none of it could touch. Around the year 165, soldiers marched home from a campaign in the east, and they brought something invisible back with them. It began as a fever. Then came the burning thirst, the swollen throat, and a diarrhea that turned black. Then the sores, ugly black blisters erupting across the skin, inside the body and out. Galen himself, the most celebrated doctor in the entire empire, the man who advised emperors, watched it spread through the population and could do almost nothing to stop it. He recorded the symptoms so carefully that we still call it the Plague of Galen, and modern researchers believe it was most likely smallpox. It burned through the Roman world for around 15 years, and the numbers are hard to even hold in your head. Somewhere between 5 and 10 million people died, roughly 1 in 10 human beings in the entire empire. It probably killed a sitting co-emperor, Lucius Verus. Soldiers died faster than Rome could recruit new ones. And that is the honest, unromantic answer to the question we started with. What happened if you got sick in ancient Rome? Sometimes the doctor bled you into a bowl. Sometimes the god in the temple ignored you. Sometimes the surgeon cut into you while you screamed. And sometimes, when the thing hunting you was big enough, the whole proud machine of Roman medicine simply stood there and watched you die. Now let me finally pay off that cup of blood from the very beginning. Why would anyone believe that drinking a dead gladiator could heal you? Because Romans believed that a violent young man, killed at the absolute peak of his physical strength, released his raw life force into that fresh, warm blood. Epilepsy in particular was seen as a sacred and mysterious illness, and Pliny the Elder wrote that the sick would drink gladiator blood as though it were the cup of life itself. The roots of the practice probably reach back into old Etruscan funeral rites, where blood and the dead were tied up with power and renewal. To a Roman, it was not insane. It was simply the strongest medicine they could imagine getting their hands on. But I promised you one last thing, and it is the strangest twist of all. Rome is famous for being clean. The aqueducts pouring fresh water into the city, the enormous public baths, the flushing latrines, the great central sewer they named the Cloaca Maxima. We picture Rome as the most hygienic city the ancient world ever produced, and yet when modern scientists from Cambridge studied ancient human waste and burials from across the Roman world, they found the exact opposite of what they expected. Intestinal parasites, roundworm, whipworm, dysentery did not fall under Roman rule. They climbed. There were more of them than in the rougher Iron Age that came before Rome. The clean city was crawling with worms. So why? Because all that famous technology hid the danger instead of removing it. The warm water in the public baths was often rarely changed, which turned those beautiful baths into a perfect warm soup for passing infections from body to body. In the public latrines, people shared a single sponge on a stick to clean themselves, and they handed it down the line from one person to the next, and they fertilized the crops they ate with untreated human waste straight from the city. So all that gleaming infrastructure that made Rome feel so advanced was also quietly carrying sickness from one person to another every single day, while everyone congratulated themselves on how modern they were. and that is the peace that stays with me. If you got sick in ancient Rome, the real danger was not only the strange cures or the missing knowledge or the man with a needle near your eye, it was that the most advanced civilization on earth could make you sicker precisely because it was advanced and never once realize it was doing it. You did not survive Roman medicine because it was good. You survived it because you were lucky. So the next time you swallow a small pill that just quietly works with no snakes, no bowl of blood, and no shared sponge, think for a second about how many people had to die in the dark on a temple floor to get us here, and be very, very glad about when you were born.